This company's never been more profitable.
You mean hugely profitable?
I like it.
DavePorter.com presents The Profitable Cleaner, a podcast on commercial cleaning sales and entrepreneurship. The one podcast that's not afraid to discuss real sales strategies with real cleaning professionals that produce real profits and real results.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Profitable Cleaner. This is going to be a fun topic. We actually we had one other person come and talk about robotics, but not to this level and to this scale. And so I'm just super excited to have Mr. Ross Blum from Skyline Robotics, President and COO. Welcome to The Profitable Cleaner, man.
Thanks, Angel. Thanks, James, for having me. Really looking forward to being here and talking about, what we view as the future of facade access, starting with window cleaning.
I love it. Hey, why don't just, because obviously we did our research, we know a little bit about you, but someone just listening, give us the quick 1 minute intro, who Ross is, and then also about Skyline Robotics.
Sure. I'll start with myself. I'm a total startup brat. I love being pushed to extremes and pushing myself further and further and bringing my team along with me to try to accomplish things that no one else has ever done. So my experience, my career has been fully within the landscape of very different startups, first in a health tech company, then a digital asset company, and now here in a robotics company. So feel very privileged to have been able to learn about so many different industries, how they operate, how you can create conviction, about very different concepts and ideas, whether from the customer standpoint or the investor standpoint. And, here in Skyline Robotics, it's been an awesome first 2.5 years, for me. The company itself was founded in August 17. So it predated, my arrival by a few years. But we've really stepped things up, gotten things going, started signing commercial deals, and raised a bunch of money along the way.
Nice, man. Nice. Startup is no joke. So you love having your back to the wall, right? Getting after it every day.
There's no better motivation than knowing you don't have 10 years to live. At the end of the day, we earn everything that we get. There's no stone unturned, no effort that's too great to put in. And, all that I ask the team to do every single day when they come to work is come in with an open mind, a positive attitude, and a willingness to get better. If we can do those three things each and every day, we'll continue to push ourselves, find ways to innovate, and find a way to deliver better product to market consistently.
By the way, that was such an underrated comment. We'll get into the Skyline Robotics here, but when you don't have 10 years to live, how do you operate? That is such a good question, because a startup is basically, and I by the way, I love startups too, man. Part of one right now myself, and I love the idea of you coming in and then you have to build out the team, and then the team works and then it doesn't, and then the product, and it's just a lot of pressure all the time, but it's so rewarding when it hits.
100%. And I'll be a first-hand person to tell you this. It's not for everyone. Some people like the 9-to-5 life at the end of the day, and I totally respect that. Totally respect that. I'm not here to say that my way of doing things or our way of doing things is better than a different person's way of how they operate and how they approach the world. But at the end of the day, we have really big ambition. And with really big ambition, you have to bring a lot of conviction, to everything that you're doing and how you approach things. And, as a small company, the little details matter so much when you're trying to impress and sell to really big, powerful companies, especially on a global scale. And, the details matter, how you interact with people matters, the level of work product that you can create matters. And certainly at the end of the day, the baseline for everything that we do, whether it's here at Skyline Robotics or any of my previous companies, the technology has to perform. And without technology performing, in the way that you're describing it, and that value being seen by the outside world from whatever perspective they're trying to perceive you through, you don't have much hope, as a company. So really details matter. How you interact with people matters. Building relationships is really, really critical. It's the very untechnological side of tech startups. And some people do it really, really well. And I think we do a pretty good job of it. And other people, aren't willing to invest the time and just think that technology should carry the day, no matter what the piece of technology is. But, there's a very untech side to growing a tech business. And that's equally as important as the technology, because the people behind the technology are the face of what you're doing. They're the interaction points, with your value chain or with your customer base. And if those people aren't top quality and performing in the way that they need to, the other side, the counterparty, won't have the same level of confidence, in giving you their business or their trust. And so, everything that we do, while foundationally based on having innovative technology and providing value back to the market, whether it's through the lens of cost savings or data and analytics or whatever the value proposition, that people hone in the most on, at the end of the day, we're all people. We're trying to do business, and we've got to operate in a way that makes people want to do business with us.
You just hit on something called what I like to call the human element. Like, people like to do business with people, no matter the technology. And I kind of teed this up before this call, before we talk all the cool stuff like robotics. I said I might ask you a few things on leadership, because I was diving into your experience, and I liked how you talked about being a startup brat. I know you had mentioned you guys had grown from 8 people to 29 people over the last few years. You're a global company, Israel, New York. How do you keep engagement amongst your staff, like aligned with the same mission, especially since you guys are in 2 different countries essentially, and working at a global scale? And then how do you keep your team like just aligned with the growth that you guys have seen, like going from 8 people to 29 in the janitorial space, who we primarily speak with? That doesn't sound like a lot, but in a startup tech space, that's some good growth, especially when you're selling at a global scale. So how do you just keep people aligned and mission driven?
100%. Well, it starts with communication. So, especially because I'm not with the team in Israel every single day, the lines of communication, how we're talking about the business, how we explain things to the team, it's not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it. That why is really, really critical to have people on our team buy into. Because if they don't have conviction around that notion of why we're working on something or why we're pursuing a specific project or building a certain feature, they're not going to build it with their whole heart, at the end of the day. The less, let's say, generic answer is it's a lot of early mornings. Me being up very, very early in the morning and spending as much time online, with the team in Israel as possible. And the second, piece of the puzzle is having a really strong leadership team within Israel. So we have amazing, vice presidents in the company, or Fabian on the R&D side, Shani Ramon on the operations side of the business. And, without them, we would not have been able to accomplish nearly as much as we have. So it comes down to organizational structure, how you communicate, making sure people understand the why, of why we're doing something. And, if you're able to, let's say, respect, all the brilliant brain power that we have, because engineers are very, very intelligent in ways way beyond, I am in certain capabilities and their focus areas and things like that. So I'm never going to be smarter than them or better than them, at what they do. But having these really, really smart people comes along with a lot of responsibility from a leadership standpoint. Because if really smart people don't buy your words at the end of the day, you're going to lose their trust. And without that trust and that conviction, it becomes very, very difficult, to build something special.
I love it. I think there's some juice in there. And whether you're operating a robotics company like Ross here, or whether you're operating a janitorial company, it comes down to organizational structure, talking about the why, clear communication. So I think those are just awesome things. It doesn't really matter the industry or what you do. Those principles apply across the board. So
with that being
100%.
said, let's get you the opportunity to talk about Skyline Robotics, though, because I think there's almost like this. So, for example, when I saw it and I was talking to a few people, when you hear the word robotics, right, just when you add the word robotics into any industry, 3 things come to people's head: too much money, it's gonna put my people out of a job. It's always like the common things, right? Like the things that we're almost programmed to think, but when you
Sure.
really look into it, it has nothing like does not work that way. So tell us a little bit about kind of like what you've run into when it comes down to robotics and maybe some of those frameworks that I just spoke about.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, look, we have to make money at the end of the day, right? So, as much fun as it would be to give away all of our technology, obviously that we charge for it. But because we charge for it, right, we need to be able to show that amount of value at a minimum, back to our customers at the end of the day. So price is a function of the value you provide at the end of the day. And sometimes those are hard costs, right? You really generate this much of cost savings. It could be soft cost dollars as well, though. You're providing my asset management team with new insights and analytics about how we're going to operate, an asset. And so there could be some soft cost layers to how you show and perceive value, certainly as well. But us, we work in a regulated industry, and there's plenty of regulations about how and where you're able to use these elevated scaffolds or the cranes on the top of the skyscraper that we plug into. And there will always need to be someone on site. So from a technical standpoint, while there's no, let's say, robotic requirement, to have someone there to actually manage and operate the system, from a compliance standpoint, there will always be, one body on site. And the statistics for the industry here in the United States are that 76% of window cleaners are above the age of 40, and only 9% are between the ages of 20 and 30. Now, when you pair that with the notion that the rate of new development has only really increased in the last 15 years, and by new development, I mean new buildings that are being constructed and built out of the ground, you have a market issue. That market issue is you have an aging workforce with fewer and fewer people signing up and only more and more windows to clean. So there's two big, sort of like opportunistic solutions to that problem. One, window cleaning companies could start having to pay way more to be able to recruit the labor force. And those increased costs would therefore be passed on to the customer at the end of the day, because window cleaning companies aren't going to try to lose money, Mm-hmm. So at some point, they'll just pass the costs on. The other solution to that problem is some new innovation or some new technology that comes in and helps provide a solution to the systemic issue. So we obviously believe that second category, is more likely to happen, and we're at the forefront of making that happen. So when we talk about, the robotic operators of Ozmo, those are window cleaners that are being retrained, upskilled, up-leveled, and being given sort of that second chance at being a window cleaner just from a secondary perspective. Now, we hope that while what we consider Ozmo, our product, is really just like a high-powered tool to enable workforce augmentation. So when we talk about workforce augmentation, a traditional window cleaning team has 3 bodies that go to a building. What we want to sort of do with our technology is say that now all of a sudden the 3 bodies that are covering one building can now be distributed to 3 separate properties all at the same time, and they're just managing this sort of robotic operation that's occurring. So we are looking for ways to help window cleaning companies, be able to cover their customer base, not just for the next 5 years, but thinking 10 years, 15 years down the line, right? Right now, maybe there is a sufficient number of window cleaners. But if the trends continue, the way that they're moving or have moved over the last 5, 10, 15 years, at some point, the labor shortage becomes too tough of a problem to solve, just with a traditional window cleaning, labor force. So, we wholeheartedly, hope that we're providing value back, not just to the window cleaning companies, not just to the asset owners in terms of the buildings, that we go and operate on. But we really hope that we can inspire our next generation of window cleaners, who actually want to come into this workforce and operate in a very different way.
I love that, man. For context here, why don't you introduce us to Ozmo, and who is Ozmo and why should people care? Give us the nitty gritty.
Sure. So at a baseline, we use the existing buildings infrastructure. So all the buildings already have these like big baskets that you usually see the humans sort of standing in. So just rather than putting human beings inside of that cradle or basket, depending on what region you're in, sometimes there's different terminology. We just plug robotic arms on top of waterproof tables. So you got to imagine that as you're sort of listening to this, just rather than, a human being with a squeegee going down the side of the building, that there's just some industrial looking robotic arms that are completing a very similar, motion in terms of like the human cleaning motion that's used. And we're just doing it, essentially with a few pieces of really cool technology along the way. So first, the robotic arm needs to understand its working environment. So we need to give Ozmo this sort of sense of sight through some context. We give Ozmo the sense of sight, through what's called a LiDAR camera. LiDAR has become popularized by electronic vehicle manufacturers to map the environments around the vehicles and where people are driving. So that's how they're sort of understanding their environments in a car. And then eventually that's how we're going to move to, truly autonomous driving, someday. We leverage LiDAR to essentially map the facade that we're working on. So in a live fashion, essentially the LiDAR is continually scanning and building a map of the facade. And what we do is what's called localization on the window frames. So basically each window frame becomes a border for the robotic arm. And then it's almost an exercise of almost like paint between the lines for the robotic arm itself. Now, we do need to recalculate the cleaning path very, very frequently, because we are in the outdoor multivariable environment where something like a wind gust might come along. So if you can imagine a robotic arm with a LiDAR camera next to it, immediately below that is this waterproof table. Inside of that table is a very high-powered industrial computer. So that industrial computer is recalculating the cleaning path again 250 times every single second. So as Ozmo is completing its motions from left to right, there could be a wind gust that comes along and shifts the axis of the basket. And so we have an IMU sensor in the table as well. So that IMU sensor, which stands for an inertial motion unit, is essentially, understanding the axes of the basket and the positioning of the basket. So as the computer is calculating the cleaning path, Ozmo is completing its motions from left to right. If the basket does tilt on an axis in some way, the robotic arm can apply about 0.25 seconds of a little extra counterforce on one side of the window sill to actually restabilize, countercorrect the oscillation of the basket, and then continue its cleaning operation. Connected between the robotic arm and the actual brush, so the tool that we use to actually clean the window, we have what's called a force torque sensor. So there's a few reasons as a window cleaning company that you could be kicked off a job for some reason or another. First and foremost, you don't get the windows clean. Like that's a pretty easy reason why you shouldn't be a window cleaner. The secondary reason is you come and you damage, the facade that you're working on, because repairing facades is pretty costly, at the end of the day. So what the force torque sensor does is allow us to manage the amount of pressure that the brush is actually applying to the facade. So basically we want to apply enough pressure to be able to clean the windows, but not too much pressure to damage anything on the facade itself. And now in every part of our system, there's always like layers of redundancy, right? What if there's a fault, in that force torque sensor, and all of a sudden the robotic arm doesn't know how much pressure, essentially it's going to apply to the facade. So we have some distance sensors, as redundancy there. So essentially there's a hard-coded limit in terms of how close the robotic arm can ever get to the window. And those, distance sensors are very, very industrial, very, very reliable, and essentially, always prevent the robotic arm from, say, crashing into the window and potentially damaging the facade that we're working on.
I'm sorry, but I love technology. Like, I don't know how you run away from technology. I love everything that you're saying, though. Like, one great explanation, because I've seen the videos. So now that you explained it, now I'm like imagining everything. I've gotten in like those self-driving cars when I was in Arizona, and it's almost like exactly how you're saying it. It's like those sensors that it says, and then it can read everything and then move itself accordingly, make some pivots based on that. It's kind of cool that you're doing that. And that statistic that you gave us, though, was crazy too. Sorry, we didn't touch on that, but you're right. No one. It's an aging job. No one wants to go and get in a skyscraper and say, "Let me just go clean some windows," and still be seen. Which is there's a part that trips me out about these jobs. You're still seen as bottom of the chain, even though it's one of the riskiest, most intense type of jobs you can do. Like, you would have to pay me a lot of money to get on that, and it wouldn't be a job. It would be like a dare.
100%. I mean, look, I've had the opportunity to be out in the field with many window cleaning teams. Whenever I'm with them, I tell them they're my heroes. I mean, here in a city like New York, they're hanging 1,000 feet in the air, doing manual labor. It can be 40 degrees outside. It can be 110 degrees outside. And no matter what, you've got to get the job done at the end of the day. So while I have a deep appreciation, for the existing labor force, I can also understand why it might not be as appealing to the next generation. So, we appreciate, the opportunity getting to work with these teams, taking feedback, from the window cleaning teams, because at the end of the day, we got to value that customer feedback, like it's gold. And, we got to build that feedback into the product consistently to continue to build trust. It's a big element of technology that you always need to do. There needs to be trust, with that technology, right? That it's going to operate, it's going to perform in the way that you want it to, that it is going to make your life easier, candidly, as well. And so building trust, doesn't happen overnight. But the more experience that people get, the more trust that they have with the system, the more successful that will certainly be overall.
Well, sorry, I just have one question here. I love, or more of a comment, and then you can take it over, James. Career growth for somebody in the window cleaning industry is similar to like janitorial. Like, you clean and then you become a lead and then a supervisor. Then what, right? Like, I love the fact that you guys are adding scalability through technology, because now 3 people can manage 3 to 5 buildings, not do one job together as 3. And then I love the fact that, like, for example, if I'm 35 years old, 45 years old right now, and I'm like, damn, dude, I don't want to keep cleaning. And then my company gets this Skyline Robotics, and now I become a robotics imagine that job title change. Just me personally, like, from window cleaning lead to robotics operator, like certified, like the pride and then the level up that you give someone is really impressive. And I think that's not talked about enough. When we talk technology, we talk about replacing people, we talk about this, and it's like, now what about empowering people? And then the morale that they get is untalked about enough.
Yeah, 100%. And it really is, amazing what the traditional window cleaning teams do. I'm scared of heights and I'm on rooftops all the time. Obviously, they're not scared of heights. I don't go over the side of the building, or I certainly never have gone over the side of the building in one of those platforms. But at the end of the day, it's a true testament to their willingness to do the job. But again, I do understand, maybe the lack of conviction from the next generation. And candidly, I'm not going to say specifically Skyline Robotics for what I'm about to say, but startups potentially are a big reason why that labor force won't show up, right? Because there's so much more educational and vocational diversity that's available to people in the last 15, 20 years. And if you really are passionate about something, there's probably a startup out there that's also pursuing, what you're passionate about. So the types of jobs, the types of industries, the types of companies that you can go and work for has definitely grown in terms of a variety. And again, maybe me and other startup companies or other startup brats are the big reason why. Some of the less appealing jobs are seeing those labor shortages. But at the end of the day, the opportunity is there for everyone to pursue many different opportunities in terms of career paths, at this point in time. And I think that's a great thing overall.
I got 2 questions for you here, Ross. So the first one is, so we're talking about the big buildings, the swinging on that bucket outside of the windows. Your videos are phenomenal. Does Ozmo ever hit the ground? Like, what happens at lower levels? Like, let's say I'm a commercial cleaning owner listening to this, and they're like, we do some smaller buildings, maybe a few stories. It's a pain in the ass, but like, is there a fit there? Like, what happens at those lower levels? And then two, like, whether it's a window cleaning company in New York City that does all those big buildings or someone else, what are common objections you get from these cleaning window cleaning owners?
Yeah, good question. So, we'll start with the first one, right? What happens when you get close to the ground? So all of these platforms technically should have wire rope, enough rope to actually reach the ground level. So that's like a safety and compliance thing, right? You don't want someone to have to be stuck on the side of the building if you're a traditional, window cleaning company. And you always want to let them be able, if they need to, right, lower all the way to the ground, so they can get out on the ground safely, or certainly bring themselves back up to the rooftop, to a safer environment. So these platforms are designed essentially to go the whole entire length, of the building. But in many cases, that lower floor or those lower two floors, might have a different window cleaning operation. Those might be sort of like long poles, that are used on those first one or two floors. Because usually the owners or the asset owners, that's where people are walking into every single day. So the frequency with which you clean like the first floor isn't the same frequency at which you clean like the 50th floor, of a building at the end of the day. So, so while the baskets are designed to come down to ground level and be accessible, from that standpoint, for any safety procedures, typically that first floor window cleaning, that second floor, is not typically done as part of what's called the tower window cleaning. So that tower is sort of like the big long part of the building, and it happens at a very different cycle. That's happening, from that tower cleaning. In terms of the types of feedback that we get, I mean, what's really interesting is the amount of interest in, what we're doing. So at a baseline, right now, so far for calendar 23, we receive about 1.59 inbound inquiries about Ozmo per day. When I joined the company, 2021 was about 0.8 inbound inquiries. 2022 was about 1.1 inbound inquiries. Now here in calendar 23, we're basically approaching 1.6, inbound inquiries per day. So the general notion that people want the technology or that there's sufficient demand, for what we're doing, we certainly have a lot of conviction about. Now, as you go from, market to market, and you really do have to think of, let's say, New York versus San Francisco versus London versus Sydney, Australia, as very different market opportunities because you have different service providers there. Typically, you have different owners, of the buildings there as well. So the relationships don't necessarily carry over from, one market to the next. I think that the biggest, thing that people always want to see from us is that, candidly, the videos look great, right? The technology looks great, but I need to get my teams, my building teams, my property management teams, my, my building manager comfortable that this is going to be the way, that we're going to do this in the future. So they need to see the product sort of like firsthand. And I think that over time, as we grow in level of success and the number of deployments and the number of buildings and the places people can see the technology, I think that bar can get a little bit lower and lower, for us. But, to the notion of what I was speaking about before, a big part of this is like building trust, and working, person to person, and that level of sort of like willingness to be able to take the time and really work with the people at the buildings and explain the technology. Because, technology, to part of what Angel was saying before, can be perceived by people as being scary, in different ways. And scary can be, oh my God, I'm going to have to start dealing with something new. Scary can be, oh my God, is this going to be, come and take my job? And we just have to be cognizant and conscious of all these different reasons why someone might be scared or apprehensive. And, we have to be willing to put our money where our mouth is, candidly, at the end of the day, right? So we need to be able to come and say, hey, if you want us to prove it to you, we're happy to come to you, and work with you and build that trust. So, I think that there's generally a fear in humans of what we don't understand. And there's a lot in this technology that a common person may not understand. And so we need to be willing to take the time to educate, to sit with these people, to work with them and show them that we care, about them also. And I don't mean just to show them that we care, to pretend that we care, but I mean really care. We want them and their buildings to operate more efficiently and better and to do things differently. And if you don't bring the requisite level of conviction with you in that conversation, not just about your technology, but really your desire to make their operations better, more successful, more efficient, that you won't, your words won't resonate, in the same way, and you won't gain that level of adoption. So, for us, it's humble and hungry always. And, one step in front of the other, and, just continually like to engage with the industry, whether it is the asset owners, the developers, the properties, the property managers, service providers, facade consultants, architects, general contractors. There's a lot of pieces to both building a building and operating a building. And we need to respect each and every layer and make sure that we're creating value for each and every layer as well.
That's so good. I think you've touched on a lot of points, and like how accessible is the learning to like just someone listening to this right now, and they're like, you know what? All right, I'm intrigued. I have, I clean a couple of the buildings, a few high rises. I have the contract until, 2028, 2030. And I really want to bring this because we haven't even talked about, value add for contract renewals through technology. But my question is, how accessible are you guys, or where would be a first step if someone listening to this going, you know what, let me begin the conversation, or I have access to these property managers, let me begin the conversation. What would that look like? Or what would you recommend to do right now?
Yeah, 100%. This happens all the time, right? We got a lot of inbound inquiries. We do try to take as many conversations, with people as possible. So, on our website, people typically fill out like just the basic contact us form. Sometimes it is maybe more like, mom and pop companies that are reaching out. And sometimes it's literally like the biggest company in the world, that's reaching out. But at the end of the day, we value the opportunity to, engage with people, and we try to be very responsive and have conversations and make sure they can understand, how we're approaching things, from a prioritization standpoint. So even though we get this much inbound interest, we can't be everywhere. So as a startup company, you always need to have focus, and you always need to have conviction around what you're focused on. So although we're in New York City today, and you might see us start to announce some other territories in the not so distant future, we're not going to try to go around the globe and have a robot running in every single market. So what's more important for us is to build up, the end user base and our customer success one market at a time. So for us, that means, investment into customer and technical service. It means investment into any, local inventory, or any servicing, obligations that we have. So when we enter a market, there are costs for us to incur that we view are necessary to make sure our customer is successful. So, we don't have an interest in having, one unit running in San Francisco, one unit running in Tokyo, one unit running in Sydney, Australia. Like, we don't think that that's a successful way to approach the market. So we are trying to make sure that as we build up, each and every market, that we're growing, that we're there to hold hands, with our partner from that local territory, that they know that, we're reliable for them in that given territory. And the way that you'll see us sort of pursue the globe is candidly looking at the highest cost of labor, for window cleaning, and working our way down to the lowest cost of labor, for window cleaning. So every market can have different labor rates, and labor rates are the driving cost, both from the service provider standpoint of what does it cost you to go and clean a building, and therefore also what is the customer cost essentially to have you come and clean the building. So, typically the highest costs are in your, more mature markets and densely urban areas, I would tell you that us and any other product that candidly probably ever tries to come to market isn't going to be suitable for 100% of buildings that have ever been built. We want to focus on skyscrapers, and skyscrapers typically are found in those dense urban areas, at the end of the day. So while, maybe one day we'll get to those three-story, four-story, five-story office parks, that you see, spread throughout the country, it's just not a priority, for us at the moment. It's not an indication that we couldn't put Ozmo on a boom truck, and have it, go clean windows, in that way. But it's just how we just haven't chosen to pursue that, sort of line of business. And we're really interested in the skyscraper market and pursuing that market with all of our conviction.
Where are you guys at right now? Like, if someone listening to this and they're in X market, that would probably and have access to skyscraper, what would be a good market right now? I believe you said New York, but I just want to double check.
Sure. So we are out in the field in New York, not every single day, yet, but getting with more and more regularity. Certainly in our R&D market in Tel Aviv, we are out in the field every single day. The world is our lab. Candidly, we do have our lab where we do lab test everything. But before a feature ends up with a customer, it needs to be field tested as well. So we have a bunch of strategic relationships, with buildings throughout the Tel Aviv market that do give us the opportunity to come and, when we're confident that the lab testing, has passed, right? We're not going to go and do anything, that we don't think is going to succeed, on their building. Then we'll come to the market, there. But, here in New York, we've had the opportunity to do some work on 10 Hudson Yards, 383 Madison, 825 3rd Avenue, and 7 World Trade Center. And we got a few more exciting buildings coming up, throughout the rest of the calendar 23.
That's awesome.
I can't wait for us to listen to this podcast, like 5 years from now and be like, oh, remember when we were talking about testing?
Remember when we talked to Ross?
And now we got the whole US and world domination in
exactly.
robotics.
No, but look, it's important that people like you guys are out there and helping us not just get our narrative out there, but really covering a space that maybe had been overlooked, from, either a podcast or marketing standpoint in many ways. And so, we appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys, share more about what we're working on and how we're approaching the world and how we view the world. And, it's been a great experience, being on the show with you.
Yeah, it's an honor, man. James, do you have anything else before we wrap it up? I think it's such a great company. I just kind of want to interview you one day just from your startup experience at a different topic. Yeah. But no, I'm excited for what you guys are doing. I know. We're going to have to figure this out soon.
Yeah, I have one. Let's close it out with this question. It's not robotic specific, but I just have to ask it. You have said the word conviction time and time again on this show. I love that word. I believe that word can mean things to different people, especially in leadership positions. What is conviction to Ross, and what's that mean to you?
Look at that question. That was a good question.
100%, but it's a simple answer. Actions are louder than words. So it's really easy to say something. It's another thing to prove it with your actions. So when I present something to the team or we're in some pitch meeting, words are nice, but your actions speak way louder than your words, at the end of the day. So people, sometimes try to get off easy and just try to say the right thing, but don't follow it up, with action. And, you got to be proactive, again, humble and hungry each and every day, but pursue, what you're pursuing and show it with your actions and not just words.
Boom. I think, like, one of my friends always says, like, what you do is talking so loud I can't hear what you say. Like, what you do is so loud I can't actually hear what you're saying. And I think that it's only a few people that can actually, like, you're like, what did they say? I don't know. But just by doing, like, seeing what they're doing, like, you want to hitch. Me and Jim's always talk about hitching our wagons to the right people. I love hitching my wagons to someone where I'm like, we just show up and things are done. They're going. We see the vision, their conviction. I love that, man. I love that.
Ross, thank you, man.
It's been a pleasure having you, Ross. Really appreciate it, man. People
thank
go
you so
on
much, guys.
LinkedIn,
Been a
go on their
pleasure.
website, Skyline Robotics. Again, if you're in New York, check them out, right? But man, thank you so much. And if there's anything ever we can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out, man.
Same to you guys. Thanks so much for having me.